Have you ever felt the sting of someone's words cutting into you, not with truth, but with arrogance? It comes suddenly, like a cold wind across the room, a smirk, a dismissive comment, the subtle lift of their voice meant to place you beneath them. Most of us freeze in that moment. We bite our tongue. We walk away carrying the weight of what we could have said. But silence, when born of fear, only feeds their pride. The Stoics saw arrogance for what it really is, not strength, but a mask covering weakness. Seneca reminded us that those who need to appear larger are already revealing how small they feel. Epictetus warned that insults only have power if we let them into our hearts. And Marcus Aurelius, calm in the face of mockery, knew the only victory worth having is mastery over your own reaction. So what if, instead of shrinking, you answered with calm words so precise they stripped the mask away? Stay with me, because what follows are 5 phrases that do exactly that. As we step into the first chapter, imagine the way arrogance enters a room. It never walks quietly. It arrives sharp and heavy, like a blade cutting the air. Sometimes it is a smirk hidden behind a glass of water. Sometimes it is a voice raised just enough to silence others. Sometimes it is the cold, dismissive glance that says more than any insult ever could. You know the feeling. It is the tightening in your chest, the sudden urge to defend yourself, the heat rising in your throat. In these moments, most people answer in one of 2 ways. They lash back, striking with anger, or they fall into silence, carrying the wound home with them. But there is a third path, quieter, older, carved by those who mastered themselves. Now imagine the scene more closely. You are seated in a meeting or standing among friends when a voice cuts across yours. It is coated in contempt, sharpened with pride. Their words do not aim for truth, only for dominance. Everyone present feels the tension. They glance at you, waiting to see how you will respond. The arrogant one waits too, confident that you will either bite back or shrink away. They believe the game belongs to them, but instead of stepping onto their stage, you smile lightly, your voice steady, and say, "You have a right to think that way." What happens next is not noise, it is silence, the kind of silence that swallows an entire room. The arrogant one blinks, confused. The audience realizes the fire they expected will not be lit. In that pause, the ground shifts. You are no longer reacting, you are leading. Here's the hidden truth about arrogance. It does not live on strength. It survives on resistance. It needs friction the way a flame needs dry wood. Without conflict, arrogance cannot breathe. Seneca once observed, "Arrogance is the desire to seem bigger when in fact you are smaller." That is the core of it. Arrogance is insecurity wrapped in armor. By acknowledging their right to their thought, you are not agreeing. You're simply refusing to pour fuel onto the fire. You're showing that their pride has no power over you unless you hand it to them. Think of a balloon, swollen and tight, waiting to burst. Every provocation, every sharp word fills it with more air. The arrogant person wants you to strike it, to make the explosion loud. But when you say you have a right to think that way, you do not strike. You let the air out quietly. The balloon shrinks. The tension dissolves. Their performance collapses not with a bang, but with a whisper. The Stoics understood this game long ago. Epictetus warned, "No one can harm your mind without your permission. You can be insulted, ridiculed, even dismissed. But none of these reach into your soul unless you let them in. The power lies in your choice to accept the wound or to stand untouchable. By using this phrase, you are choosing freedom. you are refusing the chains offered by someone else's pride. Let's return to that meeting room. The arrogant voice has tried to dominate, pressing their idea forward as law. Everyone expects you to meet fire with fire, but you break the script. You sit back, calm, and release the phrase. The silence that follows is louder than any argument. People shift in their seats. They realize what just happened. The loudest voice lost, and the calmest one remained unshaken. Respect begins to gather, not around the one who shouted, but around the one who did not need to. This is the essence of Stoic power. It is not about crushing your opponent with sharper words. It is about refusing to become their opponent in the first place. When you step outside their game, you win by default, because the game ends. Consider how much energy is wasted in arguments. Two people collide, each trying to outshout the other. Each convinced victory lies in volume. But what is left when the shouting stops? Pride bruised, peace shattered, dignity lost. The Stoics offered a higher path, mastery of self. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that the world would be filled with arrogance, envy, and malice, and yet he still carried himself with composure. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you remember this, the arrogant person no longer dictates the tone of your day. You do. Here's where the strategy deepens. By saying, "You have a right to think that way," you do something subtle. You place responsibility back on them. You acknowledge their perspective without validating it, and you reveal to everyone else that you will not be dragged into petty combat. It is a mirror. They see themselves arguing with someone who refuses to argue. They see a stage without an audience, and without applause, arrogance loses its breath. Let me share a story. Years ago, I witnessed a heated exchange in a workplace. One man, known for his arrogance, tried to dismiss another's idea in front of the entire team. He expected retaliation, a clash that would let him dominate. But instead, the second man leaned back, smiled faintly, and said, "You have a right to think that way." The room froze. The arrogant man opened his mouth, but no words came. The expected battle never arrived. And in that pause, everyone saw the truth. The arrogant one had lost control. The calm one had kept it. That single phrase changed the dynamic of every meeting that followed. This is why posture matters more than words. Anyone can shout. Anyone can argue. But to remain composed when provoked, that is rare. And rarity commands respect. The Stoics knew that true greatness is not proven by the size of your pride, but by your steadiness in provocation. You cannot always control what people say, but you can always control whether their words control you. Advancing further, let's consider the deeper philosophy. Every insult is like a gift. If you refuse to accept it, it remains with the giver. When you respond with, "You have a right to think that way," you are handing the insult back. You are saying, in essence, "I will not carry this weight for you." That act alone dismantles arrogance, because arrogance needs you to carry its burden. When you refuse, it falls apart under its own emptiness. At this stage, the lesson is clear. You are not required to fight every battle that arrogance lays at your feet. The strongest warrior is not the one who draws the sword at every provocation. It is the one who knows when to stay seated, when to let silence and serenity speak louder than any retort. And so the first phrase is more than a sentence. It is a shield. It is a reminder that calmness is stronger than anger, that recognition is not the same as agreement, that your peace is yours to protect. Use it, and you will see arrogance shrink before your eyes. The final strike is this. The arrogant person thrives on proving superiority. But when you tell them you have a right to think that way, you prove something far greater, that superiority itself is an illusion and dignity does not need to shout. That is the moment arrogance collapses and self-mastery rises. Carry this into your next confrontation. Do not fear the sharpness of arrogance. Meet it with serenity. Let them have their opinion. Let them keep their stage. Because in the silence that follows, everyone will see who truly stood taller. And from here, we move into the next phrase, a response just as simple, just as disarming, but carrying a new form of strength. Moving into the second chapter, picture the weight of a voice pressing down on you, not a gentle suggestion, not a question seeking clarity, but a hammer striking the table. Someone tries to belittle you, their words coated with superiority, their tone sharpened to remind everyone of their supposed brilliance. The room grows tense, eyes shift toward you, waiting for the explosion. This is how arrogance plays its game. It pushes until you push back. Then it feeds on the conflict it has created. But instead of fire, you offer calm. You look them in the eye, steady and unshaken, and you say, "That's an interesting point. You've given me something to think about." The entire atmosphere shifts. The hammer misses its mark. Now, imagine the silence that follows. The arrogant one expects resistance. They want to prove you wrong, to expose a weakness, to provoke a fight. But when you don't reject them, when you don't flinch, their weapon falls useless to the ground. It's as if you've pulled the rug out from beneath their feet without even raising your voice. Everyone sees the difference. They thought the one who shouted the loudest would win, but the victory belongs to the one who remained calm. Here's where Stoic wisdom enters. Seneca once said, "There is nothing so arrogant that it cannot be softened by reason." That line is more than a reflection, it is a tool. By responding with curiosity rather than hostility, you expose arrogance for what it truly is. Fragile. You don't have to destroy the other person. You don't have to prove them wrong. You only have to show that their thunder cannot move you. This phrase does exactly that. It doesn't give them victory, but it gives them something far more uncomfortable. A mirror. Think of the hidden strategy here. When you say, "You've given me something to think about," you are not submitting. You are reframing. You quietly shift the energy of the conversation. Suddenly, they are not the conqueror of the exchange, but the teacher who is being observed. And deep down, they sense the irony. You have stolen the control without taking a single step forward. The battle they prepared for never arrives. They expected rejection. What they got instead was serenity. Let me give you a story. I once watched a man, known for his sharp tongue, try to belittle a colleague during a public discussion. His voice was dripping with sarcasm, his posture inflated, as if he had already declared himself victorious. The colleague did not raise his voice, did not meet contempt with contempt. Instead, he tilted his head slightly and with a calm tone said, "That's an interesting point. You've given me something to think about." The air changed. People leaned back. The arrogant man's smirk faltered because the conflict he wanted had vanished. What remained was his own pride, suddenly naked in front of everyone. The room did not remember his insult. They remembered the calm of the one who refused to be shaken. This is where philosophy becomes practice. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You always own the option of having no opinion. Things you can't control are not worth your anguish." When you use this phrase, you're exercising that discipline. You're choosing to step outside the storm rather than inside it. You're refusing to be drawn into the battlefield of ego. And in that refusal, you display maturity. You prove that respect is earned not by the loudness of your retort, but by the steadiness of your posture. From here, consider the deeper impact. The arrogant one loses more than just the argument. They lose their stage. They came prepared for a fight, but your calmness transformed their provocation into a lesson for the entire room. Everyone watching learns something. Strength does not always roar. Sometimes it nods quietly, refuses to be moved, and lets the other collapse beneath their own performance. This approach also guards your own mind. Epictetus taught that insults only have power if we accept them. When you answer with this phrase, you refuse to carry the insult into your heart. You don't wear their words like chains. You leave them where they belong, with the one who spoke them. That is freedom. That is command. Picture another moment. In a debate, someone tries to overwhelm you with intellectual arrogance, tossing words like weapons, eager to humiliate. The crowd anticipates retaliation. But you respond with calm interest. That's an interesting point. You've given me something to think about. Instantly, the frame changes. They no longer appear powerful, they appear restless, trying to provoke a war where none exists. Meanwhile, you stand firm, untouchable, admired for the control that others lack. At this stage, the truth sharpens. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to convince the arrogant that they are wrong. What you need is to lead the moment. And leadership often means refusing the duel and guiding the energy elsewhere. When you answer with curiosity, you break the rhythm of aggression. You show that strength lies not in domination, but in the ability to redirect. Here's the inspiration beneath it. Every arrogant attack is an opportunity to reveal your calm, an opportunity to lead without aggression, an opportunity to transform tension into reflection. When you respond in this way, you don't just disarm the arrogant, you elevate yourself. You remind others and yourself that calmness is a crown and reason is a shield. So hold this phrase close. Use it when arrogance rises against you. Use it when someone tries to belittle you in front of others. Use it when pride attempts to shake your ground. And watch as the noise collapses under the weight of your silence. The closing truth is simple. You don't have to win every argument. You just have to lead every moment. And this phrase is the first step in that mastery. From here, we step into the next lesson, a shield made not of words, but of patience, a way to disarm arrogance, not by what you say, but by what you choose not to say. Advancing to the third chapter, picture the heat of an argument filling the air. Voices rise, hands cut through space, and the person across from you leans forward, desperate to dominate. They expect a clash, a quick strike of words, fire meeting fire. But instead of stepping into their storm, you choose stillness. You look at them with composure and say, "I'd prefer to hear more before I respond." In that moment, the battle they were preparing for disappears. The stage they built crumbles under silence, because the performance no longer has an audience. Now imagine the look on their face. They expected you to rush in, to answer with speed, to fight in the arena where they feel most comfortable. They built their confidence on the assumption that you would lose your balance. But when you delay, when you pause and invite them to continue, something unravels. The urgency they carried collapses into confusion. They cannot fight a war that isn't being waged. They cannot impose dominance when you refuse to compete. Here's where Stoic philosophy sharpens the picture. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The arrogant provoke, hoping to rattle your core. But when you pause, when you wait, you prove that your core is unshaken. This phrase is not just a shield, it is a declaration that you will not be dragged into their rhythm. You reveal strength not through speed, but through patience. And patience is a weapon arrogance cannot pierce. Think of how surprising this tactic is. In heated moments, the script seems already written. Attack follows attack, retort follows retort, and the crowd expects escalation. But you break the rhythm. You create space. By saying you'd like to hear more, you show wisdom that refuses the ordinary cycle of reaction. It is not weakness to wait, it is power. Because the one who can delay response holds the greater command. The Stoics called this mastery over impulse, the art of not being a slave to your first reaction. Let me bring you into a debate I once witnessed. A man raised his voice, gesturing with wide arms, pounding his point into the room. His opponent stood quietly, not shaken, not hurried. When the tirade paused for air, he spoke softly. "I'd prefer to hear more before I respond." The entire room shifted. The arrogant man stumbled, forced to continue when he had already played his strongest card. The longer he spoke, the weaker his argument appeared, until finally he drowned in his own noise. The one who paused, who listened, emerged as the master, not only of the conversation, but of himself. From here, notice the psychological effect. When you pause, you create an imbalance. The arrogant thrive on immediacy. They want quick resistance because quick resistance is easier to attack. But a pause is unfamiliar territory. It exposes their need to dominate because they cannot maintain energy without your participation. You deny them the duel, and in doing so, you steal the ground beneath their feet. This is where the lesson deepens. The world teaches us to fight back instantly, to defend ourselves without delay. But the Stoics knew that the highest form of strength is restraint. Epictetus reminded us, if you are ever tempted to look for approval outside yourself, know that you have given your power away. The arrogant person seeks your immediate reaction because it validates their importance. But when you wait, when you listen longer than they expect, you show that your dignity is not up for negotiation. Picture yourself in that moment again. You could have shouted back. You could have matched their tone, raised your volume, mirrored their aggression. But you chose another way. You paused, listened, and gently said, "I'd prefer to hear more before I respond." The room feels the shift. The audience sees the difference. They recognize that the true leader is not the one drowning in urgency, but the one who governs with patience. At this stage, the power of pause becomes undeniable. It is an invisible shield. No one can strike what does not move. No one can destabilize the one who remains centered. While the arrogant drown in their eagerness, you rise quietly, effortlessly. You prove to everyone watching that control belongs not to the loudest, but to the calmest. Here's the inspiration that carries forward. You don't need to meet arrogance on its terms. You don't need to fight in the arena built for you. You can choose another space, a space where silence speaks, where patience cuts deeper than sharp words. This phrase opens that door. It tells the world that you are not bound by another's tempo. You move when you decide, not when provoked. So hold this shield close. The next time arrogance rushes at you, don't rush back. Let them spill their words, their gestures, their fury, and when the time is right, look at them calmly and say, "I'd prefer to hear more before I respond." You will not only disarm them, you will remind yourself of your true strength. The closing truth is simple. He who waits rules. And this lesson leads us directly into the next phrase, where perspective itself becomes the weapon, and arrogance is shattered by the reminder that no view is absolute. Entering the fourth chapter, imagine the moment when someone tries to press their truth upon you as if it were law. Their words come heavy, their tone sharp, their presence swelling with the certainty that only their vision of the world is valid. You feel the weight of it, the pressure to defend yourself, to argue, to correct. But instead of pushing back, you lean into calmness, you breathe, and you answer with quiet strength. It's interesting how everyone sees the world differently. Now see what happens in that pause. The air shifts. Their voice, once so loud, suddenly feels exposed. They wanted confrontation. They wanted proof of their superiority. But you gave them something they did not expect, a mirror. That sentence, so simple, reflects their assumption back at them. The belief that they alone carry truth. Without raising your voice, without pointing a finger, you have cracked the illusion. Here's where the Stoic philosophy breathes life. Epictetus taught, it's not things themselves that disturb us, but our interpretation of things. That single insight reveals the hidden weight of this phrase. Every perspective is just that. An interpretation, a lens shaped by the mind that holds it. No one sees the whole. No one owns reality. When you remind an arrogant person that everyone sees differently, you do not insult them. You remind them and everyone else of the greater truth. Their opinion is not absolute. It is only one fragment of a vast mosaic. Picture a family gathering. The table is full, laughter and noise bouncing between walls. And then someone speaks, their voice dripping with certainty. They claim their opinion as the only truth, dismissing every other view as foolishness. The tension builds, eyes glance back and forth, waiting for conflict. But you stay composed. You look at them with quiet assurance and say, it's interesting how everyone sees the world differently. The words are soft, but the effect is thunder. They cannot attack without exposing themselves as intolerant. They cannot argue without revealing their own narrowness. And everyone else at the table sees it. They see that you did not humiliate, did not provoke. You elevated. This is where maturity separates itself from vanity. The arrogant thrive on the illusion of being above others. But when you remind them of difference, you remind them of reality. Seneca once wrote that the mind, when it understands its limits, finds freedom. To accept that your vision is only one among many is humility. To insist it is the only one is blindness. By using this phrase, you stand in humility's strength, not vanity's prison. Think of the subtle power in these words. They do not confront, they do not accuse, they do not belittle. And yet they devastate arrogance, because arrogance cannot survive without the illusion of superiority. When faced with the reminder of diversity, of minds, of views, of lives, it shrinks back, unable to bear the truth that it is not the axis of the universe. Now imagine this in a public discussion. Someone stands, pounding their opinion like a drum, eager to silence the room with their certainty. People wait for a fight, but you step in, calm and clear. It's interesting how everyone sees the world differently. The effect ripples outward. The drumbeat fades. The audience feels the shift. Suddenly it is not the loud voice that commands attention, but the steady one that refused to be dragged down. You win not by defeating, but by lifting. From here, the lesson deepens. Every time you use this phrase, you are not only disarming arrogance, you are training yourself. You are practicing the Stoic art of perspective. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to step outside his own judgments, to see that his thoughts were not the cosmos itself. When you say these words, you embody that same discipline. You teach yourself that no voice, not even your own, holds the entire truth. You begin to live in awareness, not illusion. This is also why it inspires respect. Those who hear you know that you did not fight for ego. You did not argue to win. You showed empathy, patience, and a wider lens. In a world where so many people shout to be right, the one who calmly acknowledges difference rises above. That is why people listen. That is why they remember. Let me share a reflection. Years ago, I watched a heated debate between two men. One grew louder, red-faced, slamming his certainty into the air. The other waited. When it was his turn, he did not match volume with volume. He simply said, "It's interesting how everyone sees the world differently." The room stilled. The loud man had nowhere left to go. His certainty, once so heavy, dissolved, and the quiet man walked away with respect that no amount of shouting could have earned. At this stage, the principle shines bright. Strength is not found in proving you are right. It is found in showing that being right is not the only goal. Wisdom knows that perspective is infinite. To recognize that is to free yourself from the need to dominate. And that freedom, that calmness, is untouchable. So carry this phrase like a lantern. Use it when arrogance tries to cage the world into one narrow view. Use it when certainty becomes a weapon. Use it when the room waits for a clash and you want to give them clarity instead. Because in that moment, you are not just disarming arrogance, you are elevating the entire conversation. The closing truth is simple. Arrogance dies where perspective lives. And as we step forward, we move to the final phrase, the one that closes the circle completely, exposing the deepest weakness hidden beneath arrogance itself. At this stage, picture arrogance standing tall before you. The chest is puffed out, the tone sharp, every word meant to pull you into a fight. They want to prove something, they want to win, they want the room to see them dominate. But instead of taking the bait, you breathe, keep your ground, and say, if that makes you happy, then that's fine. In that single moment, the storm loses its power. The duel never begins. Now imagine the silence that follows. Their pride begins to crack, because your words reveal the truth. They do not speak from strength, but from need. Every boast, every jab, every loud proclamation is just a plea for validation. Behind the booming voice is a fragile hunger to be seen. Here's where Stoic wisdom pierces through. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. If you let arrogance occupy your thoughts, you hand over power. But when you treat it as nothing, when you calmly let it pass, it shrinks into irrelevance. This phrase lives that principle. You show that their attempt to unsettle you holds no value, and in doing so, you free yourself. Think of a ring where two fighters stand ready. Arrogance wants you to step inside. It wants blows exchanged, words sharpened, pride clashing against pride. But by saying, if that makes you happy, then that's fine, you remain outside the ropes. The bell never rings. And that is why you win, because you refuse to play the game at all. Consider a simple scene. A co-worker tries to show they are better than you at a task. The air thickens with anticipation. People wait for your reaction, expecting defensiveness or a counterattack. Instead, you meet their words with serenity. If that makes you happy, then that's fine. A hush spreads across the room. Everyone notices the shift. It's clear you rose above the challenge. The arrogant one looks smaller, trapped in their own performance, while you remain untouchable. This phrase does something final. The earlier ones dismantle arrogance piece by piece, but this one ends the game. There is no response left for them. Any attempt to push further only exposes their insecurity more. The emptiness they face belongs to them alone. You carry nothing, and it reveals more about their weakness than you ever could by arguing. From here, reflect on the deeper truth. Arrogance is dependency. It depends on you to argue, to resist, to care. Without your energy, it cannot survive. Epictetus taught, if you want to be free, focus only on what is within your control. Their opinion, their display, their need for superiority, none of it belongs to you. Your control lies in refusing to give it importance, and once you do, their show collapses. Here's the irony. They wanted to look powerful, but your indifference exposes them. The more you remain calm, the more obvious their desperation becomes. They reveal themselves not as strong, but as needy, and you reveal yourself not as passive, but as unshakable. That is why Stoic calm terrifies arrogance. It leaves it naked. Now imagine this in your daily life. A neighbor brags, a relative insists on being right, a friend makes a cutting remark. You could fight, you could prove them wrong, but does it bring peace? Instead, you can step aside and say, if that makes you happy, then that's fine. The tension fades, the noise dies, and you remain steady. Not because you surrendered, but because you refuse to carry their burden. At this stage, the cycle is complete. Every phrase before this chipped away at arrogance, softening its posture. But this phrase ends it altogether. It is the curtain call. The performance cannot continue because you never joined the play. The closing truth is simple. The arrogant crave victory. But the greatest victory is to walk away with your dignity untouched, to rise above the fight before it begins, to leave them with their noise while you keep your peace. When you say, if that makes you happy, then that's fine, you are not losing. You are proving that mastery lies not in domination, but in indifference. And in that quiet refusal, you reveal the deepest Stoic triumph, victory without battle. These 5 phrases share something rare. They are not weapons of attack, but instruments of control. This is the essence of Stoicism, teaching us that victory is not found in shouting louder, but in mastering ourselves. Whoever keeps composure has already won before the argument begins. When you say you have a right to think that way, you reveal maturity. When you answer with, that's an interesting point, you've given me something to think about, you turn conflict into calm reflection. When you respond with, I'd prefer to hear more before I respond, you show patience that commands respect. By saying it's interesting how everyone sees the world differently, you remind others that no perspective is absolute. And finally, with if that makes you happy, then that's fine, you end the game with quiet strength, showing that arrogance never truly held power over you. These are more than phrases. They are a way of living that frees you from being enslaved to the pride of others. Imagine what happens when you begin to use them. You gain more respect, more serenity, and more authority over your own life. If this message spoke to you, consider subscribing to continue walking this path of strength and clarity. And in the comments, write your choice. Keep protecting your peace, stay steady, and carry this strength forward. The next lesson is waiting for you.